Love this podcast? Support us by leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Hit the link in the episode description to support us now. Thanks for listening and enjoy.
You know, there's an issue that gay weddings actually propose, is that if it's two guys, does a father pay for one of your weddings? And if it's two girls, whose father gets to pay for the wedding? Do they both get to?
I think it depends if the parents are cool with the wedding in general.
This
right?
This is very true, depending, yeah. And if
so, that would be the first hurdle to cross.
Yeah, but let's assume that all parents are accepting of their children who they love. How do you that? How do you overgo that tradition? Like, how do you figure that out? I don't know.
I don't think that's a tradition anymore because weddings have gotten so expensive. Like, I think now it's more traditional to have both families chip in and then the bride and groom also chip in. Usually it's like 1/3, 1/3, 1/3.
So you don't think that people are really big on tradition anymore?
If you're rich, maybe, but most people are not. So
interesting, because tradition has a lot to do with what we're talking about today.
Yes.
Yeah, the tradition of Father of the Bride movies that is apparently present in our society. Did you know that there are 3 of these films? One came out in 1950.
Yeah.
One came out in 1991.
And then most recently in HBO MAX, 2022's Father of the Bride.
Yeah, so we're going to get all into that on our first full episode. You weren't here 2 weeks ago and I wasn't here last week. It's good to be back. So join us as we talk about weddings and traditions, everyone's favorite topic.
Sure. It's a summary.
It's so summary, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm Nicole.
And I'm Rolando.
And this is Remakes, Reboots, and Revivals.
An original podcast
about
unoriginality.
So if I sound a little weird or if I'm just a little out of it, I just got my wisdom teeth removed and I'm in some pain. So, just want to put that out there and give you guys a disclaimer.
My sympathies.
Yeah, Rolando cannot sympathize with my pain, truly, because he does not know this pain. But you out there, if you've had this removed and you ever got dry socket, then you know exactly how this feels. But we'll leave that at that.
I just want to point out that you said that you don't know for sure that you have dry socket. You just hypothesizing. So.
By the time this episode is out, I will know, and I will be proven right that I do have dry socket. Well, actually, I shouldn't hope for that because it's very dreaded. But yeah, so how was your vacation?
Yeah, no, it was fine. I actually was a guest on another podcast that pretty much pop, I think. Yeah, for Jurassic World. So that was fun. I got to do that during my vacation. Since I hadn't seen Lightyear, it kind of worked out. Eddie was none too pleased. It's just like, we're on a vacation and you're recording a podcast. I'm just like, this is my career now. This is who I am.
Wow, you're making time for other people's podcasts while you're on vacation and not your own. Our listeners should definitely be offended by this.
I had already seen Jurassic World, so that was like an easy thing. I had not had time, like leading up to the vacation. I was so busy I didn't have time to watch Lightyear. I still haven't seen Lightyear.
Well, I mean, did you listen to my episode?
You know I didn't.
Yes, I know you did. It's okay. I didn't listen to your episode.
I don't even listen to my own episodes.
Well, I mean, it was better than Jurassic World. I'll say that.
Okay. I liked Jurassic World was fine. So
that's so funny. It's like pretty universally hated, and yet you're like, it's fine.
It's not good. I think it's fine. I think it's absolutely a enjoyable film, and it seemed like all the critics that were on that pretty much pop with me agreed. It's just like, look. We're not looking for an Oscar-worthy endeavor here. We just want to see dinosaurs kill people, and that's what we got.
Yeah,
Did they kill enough people?
Did they kill enough? I don't know about that, but less, as my baby cousin put it, less CGI robot, more dinosaurs eating people, or like robotic girl or whatever she was. A clone girl.
She's a clone.
I see how memorable this movie was. Maybe you guys should go back and listen to that episode. It was fun. We had Mackenzie on. It was a good time. But yeah, so today we're gonna be doing 3 whole movies, and one of them is a classic black and white film. I'm so excited to get Rolando's thoughts on that.
Thank God I saw it because I didn't know that there was a one that predates the 1991 one.
Yeah.
right? So I was just like, let me just double check to see that I didn't miss another film. And I was like, oh God, I had to watch another movie. And I did it right before our episode, because it's on HBO Max.
It is, yes, it is. Luckily on
Thank
HBO
God.
Max. Yeah, I guess this must be an HBO Max property. Although the 1991 film is not on HBO Max, so
Yeah, maybe they just own the rights after its merger with Turner Classics, or maybe.
Yeah, it's definitely Turner Classics thing. This episode has a lot in common because I'm like, I feel like we did this before, but what we did was Cheaper by the Dozen, where we covered 3 movies. Yeah. One of them was a 1950 movie, and then the second one was a Steve Martin movie. So it just
we've actually covered. This is our 4th Steve Martin film.
Yeah, we recently did. Yeah, this year.
Yeah, this year alone. Like, we had Cyrano with Roxanne.
Yes. Another one with 3 movies.
Another one with 3 films.
The first film came out in 1950. Wow.
Oh, wow. Look at that. What was there's a 4th that I'm missing.
We missed it?
No. I'm missing. We covered 4. This is our 4th Steve Martin film this year. I just don't. Cheaper by the Dozen, Roxanne,
Father of the Bride.
Well, I'm not even counting. I wasn't even counting Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, but it'll come to me. It'll come to me in the middle of this recording.
Oh, we did Dirty Rotten Scoundrels in the past. Yes.
But no, this year alone, I'm positive there was another one this year that we covered, but it'll come to me. Don't worry.
Should we just look it up? Get it over with?
Fine. I'll look it up. Top Gun, Chippendale, Firestarter, Cheaper by the Dozen, Fresh Prince, The Batman. I'm sorry, guys. I'm just reading out the list of all the movies Cyrano. Murder Successful, Sex and the City, Macbeth, Scream, Harry Potter. Oh, I guess not. Maybe it wasn't this year then.
Wow.
Oh, there you go. Maybe I was thinking of Dirty Rotten Scoundrels.
Well, the 4th film we've ever done for the podcast, which might be... he might have just set a bar right there.
Yeah, for his work, for sure.
I guess we don't think too fondly of Steve Martin.
I like Steve Martin.
Okay.
I got nothing against Steve Martin films, and I mean, spoiler alert, guys. I think this was, the original, not the original. I'm sorry, the 1991 Father of the Bride is absolutely fine. It's cute.
Absolutely fine. Yeah, I would probably agree with that. Yeah.
I mean, I think this entire franchise can be just defined like that. They're fine.
Yeah. Well, this is definitely like for a group. It's like a genre within itself. It's not technically rom-com. It's kind of like the fam-com, which is similar to rom-com, and it's just meant to be kind of like comfort films, comfort viewing. That's like meant to be relatable and about everyday struggles, and that you can always just pick up and rewatch. It's this whole genre within itself that I am kind of a fan of, but it's not my go-to. Like, it's meant to be something that you could put on in the background or just rewatch all the time, and yet I don't find myself doing that with this kind of subgenre within a comedy. Do you?
I don't know. I'm not big on rom-coms, no.
Yeah. I guess rom-com, fam-com.
What?
Like, it's like I said it's like more like a fam-com.
It's like a family comedy. Like, it's not my go-to genre by any means.
Are you reading a text or something?
No. I'm trying to see if like there was another film that I'm like.
You seem very distracted.
Another Steve Martin film. Yeah, I'm adamant. I'm just like, I did the math in my head. I know there's a 4th film out there.
There is Dirty Rotten Scoundrels and The Hustle. But
no,
not
there was
year.
another more recent one. I feel like, but okay, whatever.
Sorry. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I do think that the original film in the 1951 is something that not a lot of people talk about. I feel like the 1991 one gets referenced or brought up a lot, but
yeah, because I think Steve Martin, it's a charming movie.
It is. Yeah, it's perfectly charming.
It's really what it is. But I think, the 1991, it's so hard to say 1991 film. I wouldn't say the 1999 one. Is more or less the same film as the 1950s, just a little updated.
It is
to reflect the times, but even then, like, more or less it's the same thing. And I would even make the argument the 2022 one pretty much the same thing.
Interesting. All right, so let's talk about these movies. So
it's the most different, but it's not. It doesn't diverge that much.
Okay. So the 1950.
Oh, sorry, I kicked my dog by accident.
Oh.
He was under me, and I didn't notice.
Yeah, that's the worst. I do that sometimes. I've done that to my animal, and it's just the worst feeling. So the 1951 is an MGM production, the biggest movie studio back in the day, directed by Vincent Minnelli, who we now know
as Liza Minnelli's father
and Judy Garland's husband, second husband, and a huge film director within his own right. Directed Meet Me in St. Louis, The Bad and the Beautiful, Some Come Running, Gigi. I mean, he was just one of the top MGM old school directors. An American in Paris, The Bandwagon, just he's wonderful. And this film doesn't really fit the Minnelli style because Minnelli was actually an interior designer and he loved, beautiful sets and costumes and just really, really making intricate Technicolor films. This is not that. It's a black and white movie. And actually, this was more of like an assignment for him where they were just like, around this time in 1950, I think these movie studios were realizing there was a big niche for family films. Cheaper by the Dozen also came out this year. And so MGM just wanted to get in the game, got the novel by Edward Streeter, and pretty much turned it into a movie. And they filmed it like on schedule, just no issues, no like stories about anything going crazy or last minute rewrites. And it made them a shitload of money. And they actually filmed the sequel to this movie before the first film was released. And the sequel is Father's Little Dividend. So fun fact.
So this one also has a sequel.
Yes, this did have a sequel because people just love wholesome content at the end of the day.
Right.
I think that's definitely something Americans are particularly fond of. So, so this stars Spencer Tracy, and it kind of was tailor-made for him. The story goes that actually Jack Benny was in the running, and Jack Benny used to be a huge radio and television personality, someone I am quite fond of. And had Jack Benny starred in this film, you probably would know who Jack Benny is, but I'm going to assume you don't know who he is.
Not a single clue.
Yeah, he never really got a big movie break like this. And he didn't get this role because even though he landed those comedy parts, he did not nail the dramatic parts. And you kind of need an actor that can do both. And Spencer Tracy was not known as a comedic actor before this. He was pretty much a dramatic. He did everything, and that's what he was known for in his career. But yeah, once he became available for the project and accepted it, that's it. Like, it's Spencer Tracy's. And we have co-starring Joan Bennett as his mother, as the mother, Ellie Banks. Spencer Tracy stars as Stanley T. Banks.
Is that I have I seen her in anything before, or
you might have? Let's see.
She looks familiar, but she could just have that face that like just looks like.
Yeah, I don't think we've watched a Joan Bennett film for the podcast. Okay. And if we haven't watched it for the podcast, you probably haven't seen a Joan Bennett film. Have you seen Suspiria, the 1977 film?
Yes, I did.
Albeit a much older, she was in that.
Was she one of the dance instructors?
One of the Coven members, yes.
Okay, I got it.
Yes. And we have, as the daughter, Kay, because we have the father, we have the bride, we have a young Elizabeth Taylor.
Yes, I didn't know it was her until just now looking at the Wikipedia page.
You didn't know it was her when you watched the movie?
No.
Wow.
But I don't Elizabeth Taylor is not someone who is constantly on my mind. So like
she doesn't have to be constantly on your mind for you to know what she looks like.
No, I know what she looks like old, right? With the White Diamonds commercials, but I didn't know what she looked like young. I know we saw a film with Elizabeth Taylor, right? It was like Little Women.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, and even that I can't I don't remember what she looked like.
So you're telling me you haven't really seen Elizabeth Taylor movies?
No. What other Elizabeth Taylor movies are there to watch?
That was insulting, first of all. I just feel like the gay agenda has changed because I thought Elizabeth Taylor was an icon, and you're telling me
Elizabeth Taylor is an icon because of her White Diamonds.
Okay, yes, and her, love life of her 8 husbands.
And her love life, yes, that's right.
But also her movie work. I mean, she's a really good actress. And she also was in films that like addressed things like homosexuality before Hollywood films actually was making that acceptable. I mean, you've never seen her in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf or...
Oh, wait, no, I have seen Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, but she was older.
Yeah, she was older.
That was not like, this is like a young Elizabeth Taylor.
Yes, she has her... So she actually grew up an actress. She was working since 1944 in a film called National Velvet, which is a film about a girl and a horse. And she was she was in musicals.
Okay.
Yeah, she was family centered actually, and she went
Okay.
to school on the MGM lot along the likes of Judy Garland and Mickey Rooney and stuff. So she
Wow.
very much grew up in that world, which is probably why she became the person she became. And it's funny because around 1950 she got married to her first husband, Conrad Nicky Hilton, and they used that wedding as a tie-in in a way to promote this movie, which is also, some say, why the movie was so successful. And I think MGM like helped pay for her dress or ordered her dress or something.
Oh, that makes sense, right? Like, why not?
Yeah,
Like,
it's good promotion.
One hand washes the other.
Yeah, exactly. So this was a big turning point for Elizabeth Taylor too, because she's now no longer a little girl; she's an adult. And she very next year she went on to star in a film called The Place in the Sun, which is actually a very, very good film, and definitely made that transition from child star to leading woman pretty easily.
I found her so annoying.
Really?
The character.
You find everyone in older movies quite annoying. You found Katharine Hepburn in Little Women very annoying.
You had to give me that one. She was so annoying.
It's a different era. It's a different type of acting.
Because even Eddie had enough of her at that point.
She definitely only was at 100, but I love Katharine Hepburn. I didn't find her annoying in this movie, but I also didn't.
Oh my god! Oh, she was so whiny.
Yeah.
And that's a character, obviously. I'm not talking obviously about Elizabeth Taylor, but like it was a whiny character, and I hated her. But I kind of hated everybody, to be.
Oh, you hated everybody. Okay,
I did.
Well, so this Banks family, there's 3 of them. It's the oldest, Kay, and her 2 younger brothers, Tommy Banks and Ben Banks. One of them played by.
I was gonna say it's like there's more than 3. They were her brothers also. Yeah.
The 3 children, I mean.
3 children, yeah.
Russ Tamblyn is actually Tommy, if you didn't realize that was Russ Tamblyn, who plays Riff in West Side Story.
Oh, okay.
And she's the oldest and arguably her father's favorite, and she comes home one night and tells her parents she's got engaged, and of course the father does not handle it very well. See, The Father of the Bride, most of these movies are simply about a family unit with a beloved daughter who suddenly announces at quite a young, at an expected age or time of her life that she's getting engaged, and it's pretty much about planning a wedding and everything that could go wrong, especially with the father's role in this world and this wedding planning,
which I find interesting, right? Because I thought, wasn't that like what women were raised to do back then, like to
get married,
wives? Yeah, like that's what they were. I thought that isn't that what like the Dark Ages, which I mean black and white films, was all about? Like it's like you must grow up to find a husband.
Yeah, I love how you think the Dark Ages are black and white films, even though there was 1900 whole years before that. So believe it or not, by the 1950s, people were more advanced. They were like, weren't you going to go to college? And didn't you want to like work a little bit before you did that? Because even though it was expected at some point for a woman to do that, she didn't have to do it immediately.
That work was like what? Being like a receptionist, right? At like Mad Men type office.
Yeah, but at that time, women had some sort of an opportunity, right? Even if they had very little things, they still should go out and enjoy what they were able to do.
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe it's because this is before the feminine mystique was written, and so I just like assume anything prior to the feminine mystique is just like the Dark Ages also.
The
for women.
Crusades.
I mean, technically, you could make the argument that like we have re-entered that in the past couple of weeks.
You
so
could
like
make that argument, yes. Have things changed much since 1950 movie? It's so funny because when I watched it, I was like, this feels more contemporary than I expected it to.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is why
you're also a woman.
I'm a woman, but I also feel like there's a huge kind of conservative renaissance happening within our culture because we've made too much progress. And anytime we make too much progress, if you take like 2 steps forward, they're like, you have to take 10 steps back.
Right.
And so there are a couple of things where I was like, oh, wow. I just didn't think that a film of 1950, I would be like, wow, I recognize this and I relate to this. I would expect it to be really dated and just, I mean, even me who watches a lot of black and white movies, I watch these films and sometimes I'm like, oh, wow, can't relate to that. Something I don't know anything about, not like it's fine. I recognize this as a time in history, but it isn't a
Uh-huh.
reality for me. So I just found myself experiencing that, which is new for me, for someone who watches a lot of old time stuff.
Yeah. I can't say that I related much to any of these films. We could talk about the HBO Max original, but obviously for very different reasons.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know, like, because I'm as the male of the family, like, I don't think my parents ever planned my life around a wedding as mothers usually do with their daughters. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that's a very common thing that is still perpetuated by society, right? Like a mom wanting her daughter to have like this big lavish wedding. As we talked about in the cold open, I just don't know necessarily, like, just from conversations with friends who had weddings and stuff, like, they have had, it's no longer like the bride family pays for everything.
Yeah,
right? Like now
things
it's
have
because
changed. Yeah.
because they're so expensive.
Well, true. Weddings are the most lucrative business and that like period for at least like middle and lower class people. Like this is how you make bank. This is a really good market for people to get into. And this is like, I think in one of these movies, someone says the two most important moments of your life is when you get married and when you die. Or is that in a different film I watched recently? Maybe.
I don't remember that line.
But yeah, I think I'm confusing it with a different 1950s film I watched recently. Oh yeah, Imitation of Life.
Okay, yeah, it sounded very similar to that line. Is like your best days with a boat is the day you buy it and the day you sell it.
Yes, but people are gung ho about weddings because they literally feel like this is supposed to be one of the biggest, most extravagant, fun days of their lives. And I think the reason I found it so relatable is because I have a lot of experience in the wedding industry myself.
Yeah, I mean, even as someone who planned his own wedding and stuff, but I went for I was like the bride in the 1951 who was just like, I just want like a cheap small wedding, which I did. I feel like 120 people is actually a relatively small wedding. So,
oh really?
I think so. Yeah, because I've been to weddings where like you're just like one of like 300. You know?
Yeah. To me, I would consider a small wedding to be less than 100 personally.
That's like a micro wedding. That's like why even bother?
Oh, right, because the point of having a wedding is to do it in front of everybody lavishly.
I think the point of a wedding is to show off your taste, not your wealth, but your taste.
See, this is, to me, the point of a wedding is to make a financial and governmental, I guess, agreement between two people who will just
That's the point of the nuptials.
The nuptials.
Nuptials are not the wedding. The wedding is the cocktail hour and the reception. Right? No one cares about the fucking ceremony. Even Eddie, every time we've been invited to a wedding, sorry guys, if you invited me to a wedding, here's the truth. Eddie always tries his hardest to make me miss the ceremony because he just doesn't care.
Oh, wow.
We're just there for the free food and drink.
It's true. And most people should just be invited to the reception part of it because that's what everybody comes for. So it's so interesting what weddings have become. And it was seeing that it was like that in the 1950s was just, to me, surprising. So essentially the different things that the Banks family goes through is first acceptance of the fact that this is happening and they can't really do anything about it. As the father of the bride, the tradition has always been that you have to pay for it. So Spencer Tracy's character, Stanley, who I think is just like a banker, he lives pretty, I guess,
he's like
upper middle classy.
Upper middle, fine.
But he still is like, oh, this is a lot, but he's a very proud man. And so
I loved how they were talking. This is a lot. $3.80 per like it was like an extra $3.80 for something. $3.80.
$3.80 per head. You know,
is that what it was? Yeah. It was just like it's like I wish.
I know, seriously. And I was like, wow, I wish I knew what like the numbers were back in the day. Cause
yeah, it's like nowadays it is $380.
Like adjust that to 2022 prices. I would love to know that.
Okay, so beat by beat, here we go. Hang on, let me go. It is the father has reservations about the wedding and the upcoming nuptials. Then they will eventually meet the family and discover that the family is wealthier than they are, which always they will offer to pay, which always upsets the father of the bride because that's not what tradition dictates. And therefore, the father of the bride takes on all this, puts it all on his back. And despite the fact that he will try to weasel his way out of it, like whether trying to persuade the daughter to not get married or push the family to, not the family to break up, but like the couple to break up. Not necessarily push them to break up, but like if there'll be a moment when the bride will not has decisions to like not go through with the wedding, and it's up to the father to decide whether or not it's like, okay, yeah, do that or don't, right? And he usually comes around and like has them, walk down the aisle, and then they have a wedding and all is saved. By the way, $3.20 was $38.81 today. That's how much it would have been worth.
Oh, you actually did that?
Yeah, I Googled it. Yeah, I checked it out. And I think that's still ridiculous. Like $38, like that's for, I don't know. That's like for the accoutrement.
Wow. That's how outrageous prices have gotten in this country. It's crazy. Yeah, so that is pretty much, that's it. So what did you think about the dynamics between this family, or like the representation of family struggles in the 1950s? You say it's not relatable. Nothing of it was relatable?
I just didn't. So outside of the fact that the father was very, very awkwardly overprotective of his daughter, like there was nothing. He went through the list of all her boyfriends that she's had in the past, which also surprised me. I didn't know that women were allowed to date around that much prior.
Your ideas of what
I know, like my ideas of what the past is like is based off of like Archie comics, I guess. You know what I mean? Like,
or Norman Rockwell paintings, it seems.
Yeah. So yeah, he just didn't like her. I don't know. Like, so again, this was my confusion. It's just like she's not like that. Like, yeah, she can go off into pursuit to have a career, but like as the mother pointed out, it's like we did the same thing. Like I was her age when I got married to you. Why? I don't know. What media has like this like constant need of like making these fathers like these like patriarchal figures who have to really let go. They put their daughters on such a pedestal, which I think is such a dangerous thing. And seeing even back then, I'm just like, wow, it was just like it was even prevalent like in the 1950s. That didn't surprise me. The fact, I don't know, the mother wanted her daughter to have this nice wedding too. I don't know. Like I just think it's just like, okay, maybe it's because I had seen the 1991 Father of the Bride way back when. So like it wasn't like all that unfamiliar to me. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, so the parts that I thought were pretty crazy was how much at some point in this movie the wedding becomes so important to the parents, particularly the mother, that it overwhelms her child. Right. I think that's true to this day. I think that other people's opinions influencing the couple and like ideas of what other people think you should do for your wedding or what they want you to do for your wedding is still very prevalent.
I would agree.
And I think that having like making sure that, a girl has a dream that she's had for her whole life, is something that every bride everywhere can relate to. And I also think is one of the things that I can't stand about the wedding industry is this idea that people have in their heads of what the perfect wedding should be, and like almost becoming, that's where you get the term bridezilla-ish about it if it's not that way. And that's more so today. I mean, I would not say that Elizabeth Taylor's Kay at any means was a bridezilla. I think that everyone around her was pressuring her to make this wedding bigger and better. And so I thought that was interesting. But other than that, the movie is not, by today's standards, incredibly funny, I would say.
I would maybe that's what it is.
Yeah, like it's just it's like, not very funny. Like, and the 1991 movie pretty much takes this template and copies and pastes it with adding a lot more like ludicrousy and I guess I don't even want to say diversity, but it changes things up, especially when it comes to the wedding planner. But there is one sequence that I actually thought was pretty entertaining where he has an engagement party at his house, but he doesn't even get to enjoy it because he's too busy mixing cocktails and making drinks for everyone the entire night. Right. And it's like, oh, wow, yeah, that's what it is like to have a party. And
it is
having a reception too.
I can relate to that.
Yeah,
I guess.
I can definitely relate to that. And the reception too was just like so crazy you could barely walk around and just like everyone coming in. It's like, oh, I don't even know you. Who are you? Welcome. Just like the extravagancy of it all, and just wedding crashers are a real thing. I remember I actually edited a wedding video once, and I had this whole dance portion, and then the bride and groom were like, hey, this is great, except there's a bunch of clips of people that we don't know. The dancing
oh, really?
It's incredibly easy to crash a wedding. You could just nice and just walk into cocktail hour.
Oh, I just assumed. See, I didn't think wedding crashes. I thought it was going to be people like plus ones of the couple of like their invitees that they don't know.
It could be that, yeah. But I mean, if you don't know the person that they're dancing with, then that's a problem.
That's true. I mean, that's also true.
And this movie is also narrated by Stanley, so it's very much his movie at the end of the day. Like, this movie has a lot.
It's his title.
It's his title, and most of these movies are like they're about the parents, they're not about the children and stuff. So it's very more concerned with the parents' roles and kind of like them realizing that they're making it too much about themselves and that they got to make their family happy and all this stuff.
Right.
And actually, there's this one sequence where he tries to convince his daughter, like, if you want to elope, I'll give you money to do that, because he's realizing how expensive it's going to be that he'd rather his daughter just go off and elope.
So I had a friend who was getting married, and the bride's parents offered him money. It was just like, we will give you the amount of money that we're going to put in towards this wedding for you to not get married. No, I'm kidding. It was we'll give you the amount of money so you guys have a down payment on a house. Right. And when the bride found out, she was livid because she wanted the wedding. You know what I mean? Yeah. So there we go. And yeah,
other than that, the movie's an hour and a half. You get in, you do the thing, you get out. That's it. I think it's a perfectly fine film, as I think that all iterations of this are perfectly fine. Again, it's not my genre. I'm not like a family comedy enthusiast, but the sexual politics not how do I say this?
The gender
conformity,
norms.
the norms, but also like, the way that fathers feel about their daughters. The questions that always bring up, and especially the first two films, is really interesting to try and dissect, because men always kind of talk about what it is to have a daughter, or like anytime that they try and like get into political debates about gender issues and stuff, it's usually because be the father of a daughter, you'll understand, like it's more important to be a father of a daughter than it is to actually be a woman. Or
that's a fair point, right? But that's because so many of our decision makers are men.
It is, exactly. See, that's exactly the world works from the point of view. Everything is always from the lens of the man, which is why these movies always are getting remade, because for some reason we put the POV of a man in such high esteem. We're never going to get mother of the groom. We're never going to get it, mainly because the tradition is not that she pays for it, but also people quote unquote don't want to see movies about women, right? Something that we're trying to change. Like,
is that true? Are predominant rom-coms usually from the point of view of the woman, though?
Well, rom-coms, though, are they not designated to be women movies? Chick flicks.
Okay, that's fair. Okay, fine.
Now, of course,
you got me there.
Look, I'm not saying that this is still true to this day. We are changing, but for the longest time, and in some ways, there is this hesitation to not. It's like watching a movie about minorities through the POV of a white person. If you're gonna tell a story about, it's like Dances with Wolves. You have to tell it from the man's point of view or the white man's point of view, and blah blah blah. So it's just one of the interesting things that all three of these films kind of bring up is a father's relationship, and like almost like how important it is to a man to be protective of his daughter, whether or not the daughter wants you to be, or whether or not the daughter expects her father to have that role, or is even willing to accept that. It's more about him. Am I making sense?
Yes, you are. No, like it's like, as the movie says, it's about the father's bride, and the whole film is about his feelings. Like, oh my God, oh, it's so expensive. Oh my God, I didn't like when his wife was just like, I wanted a wedding like this, and you never gave it to me. Like, oh, I didn't know because I just wanted a small thing. You know what I mean? It's all me. And you know what's in? You can't spell men without me.
Oh, right? Hey, yeah.
Did I make that up? I'm gonna put that on a shirt.
I like that. You should put that on a shirt.
I don't know what it means, but it sounds right.
But the film, I think, at least the 1951, before we move on to the 1991 film, it kind of makes fun of it, but it not in a self-aware kind of a way. And I think that's something that the 1991 film was trying at least to do a little bit more of, which is like, okay, like, yeah, we see the weird roles that men, like fathers, feel about their daughters and stuff, especially when they get married. Maybe we should make more of a parody of that, but also like a sweet and genuine film. And that was like kind of the balance that they tried to make with 1991. But the benefit of the 1991 film is that a woman co-wrote the screenplay, and she's one of the most prolific, actually, female filmmakers. Her name is Nancy Meyers. Nancy Meyers, I think, is someone who has kind of transcended the romantic comedy to be more than just like the chick flick genre. She did
Sleepless in Seattle?
No, that is Nora Ephron.
Oh, whoops.
She's kind of defined that genre with When Harry Met Sally and Sleepless in Seattle, and You've Got Mail. Yes. Nancy Meyers has done Something's Gotta Give, The Holiday. It's complicated. Yeah. She's like expanded the genre. It's like, well, older people fall in love too, divorced people and like people with grown ass children. Now, of course, very rich white upper class white people stories, but nonetheless.
I mean, yeah, but they're still old people stories which deserve to get told.
They do, yes.
And I do like Something's Gotta Give though.
No, Nancy Meyers films are perfectly fine. I mean, she's got this aesthetic to her. So this was, though, before she became a filmmaker. She co-wrote it with the director of this movie, Charles Shire. And I don't know if she was married to him or not. I think maybe. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, wow. they wrote
spreading gossip about these
I think
celebrities.
So. Yeah, let's set this dish out on Nancy Meyers. So 1991, we were alive for that, but we were just babies, still watching Disney movies and Beauty and the Beast. So, right. But did you grow up watching this?
Did that come out?
Yeah, Beauty and the Beast came out in 1991.
Did I? I didn't necessarily grow up because it wasn't like I was watching this to be because I sought it out. It was just something that would get syndicated on Channel 11, which I watched a lot. So that's why I grew up watching it. But it wasn't like, I don't know. It's not like a touchstone memory in my book. It was just entertaining to watch.
Yeah. So I've never seen this film until very, very recently.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It's a cute film.
Which is really interesting because my mother and my sister, I'm sure, have both seen this movie and they both love this movie. Yet where was I? I don't know. Like, they've seen it for years, but I guess I must not have been home that day when they watched it or have rewatched it. And it's weird how this movie has always escaped me until recently. But yet I knew so much about it. I knew about Martin Short as the wedding planner.
Martin Short and Steve Martin together, always
just a winning combo.
Comedical. That's why I've been loving their show that they have, Only Murders in the Building.
Yes.
They have such great chemistry.
They do, yes. And most of their Three Amigos is also quite good. See, I'll watch Three Amigos before I'll watch Father of the Bride. But I hadn't seen it until recently, which is also a bummer because Diane Keaton's in it, and I love Diane Keaton, but Diane Keaton is not given a lot to work with in this movie.
It's true. Like, Diane Keaton here is mostly just like, George, you need to like get on board with this wedding. That's her role.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah,
constantly. Pretty
much just like copy and paste, kind of wallpapery, and really annoying because you have fucking Diane Keaton in the role. I mean, I know we're not supposed to talk about Woody Allen movies, but if you've ever seen Annie Hall, you know how fucking great this actress is, and you're just giving her shit. If you've ever,
Diane Keaton took this role, so she must have known like what it was.
Maybe she was like, I just want to play someone bland.
Yeah,
she never does.
I guess maybe.
Have you ever seen the movie The First Wives Club?
No. I've only seen the commercial many times.
Well, there's this great scene where she realizes her husband's cheating on her with her therapist, who encouraged them to get back together. It's all sorts of fucked up, and she has a mental break.
Super fucked up.
She has you should Google this, YouTube this scene. She has a mental breakdown when she screams on the top of her lungs, apologizing. So she does the whole thing where like women always feel like they have to apologize, but she's so angry that she's screaming her apologies. It's fucking iconic, honestly.
Interesting.
I think like I saw Bob the Drag Queen recently did it at a show because it's
really?
So good. And I'll send that to you on Instagram. But anyway, what a miss. They had Diane Keaton. They didn't really use her. Again, these are the men's movies anyway. So we have the Banks family here, but instead of it being Stanley and Kay, we got George Banks, played by Steve Martin, Nina Banks, played by Diane Keaton, and their daughter Annie. And Annie is 22, just was away in Italy for 4 months. and has come back and announced that she's engaged to some guy she met in Italy. And
right. I mean, what a dream. Although there's a famous TikToker who basically lives that life.
Oh, really?
She met like some hot Italian guy. Now they have like a TikTok together that both Eddie and I cannot stop watching.
Wow.
I forgot their names already, but basically it's just making fun of his otherness, his accent, and like trying to pronounce English words. Like when he tried to say skyscraper, he said sky scratchies.
Really?
It's funny.
That sounds hilarious.
It's you had to watch him to understand, and I'm sure our listeners out there know exactly who I'm talking about.
Yeah, no,
maybe
they're all avid TikTok users, I'm sure.
I hope. TikTok is the shit.
So this movie is very much the original. It's to the point where it also opens up with a narration. And we forgot to mention that the 1951 opens on the night of the wedding, right? So he's like there in a just messy reception hall, which is actually his house, talking to the camera. And that's exactly how the 1991 film begins as well.
Right.
And Steve Martin, in the 70s was just a goofball. I mean, he was in The Jerk. We know him from his Saturday Night Live things that he did in the 70s. He was crazy, wild and crazy guy. But in the 80s, he started, he started doing different films like Roxanne and stuff, and he started toning down that kind of personality and becoming what we kind of know Steve Martin to be now. So he was really the perfect guy for this role, to be like an endearing, genuine father, but also like just completely absurdist and just wacky situations.
I mean, definitely wacky situations.
Yeah.
Not as wacky as like I would call them, but
yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, especially when they go and meet the other family. The other family.
I guess that's probably the wackiest.
That would be definitely the most embarrassing for sure. But this movie also really wants to be genuine, and from the moment that she tells him, "Oh, I'm gonna get engaged," he like looks at her, and then like the next shot, she's like a 5-year-old telling him that,
right.
So it's like he's constantly looking at her, and he always sees like her as a baby and stuff.
Yeah, he infantilizes her.
Yes. And so it's interesting because at sometimes it's like, oh, how sweet, and it's like, oh, like I'm not a parent, but I have a niece and nephew, and it's like, oh my God, I'm just gonna be such a wreck when I watch them grow up and all this stuff. But at the same time, it's like this is a grown person who is more than just your child now that you need to respect. And it's interesting because as a parent, it must be really hard to toe those lines. I cannot say I am not a parent, but the movie does try and like toe that line where it's like, oh my gosh, this is my baby, and just yesterday I held him in my arms, but they're grown adult and all that stuff. Do you think it successfully did that?
I think it did, because I don't know, like I think maybe right from the get-go when we see that visual cue, it's like being spoon-fed to us. Like, obviously this is how he sees her, but they kind of go with that. Like, he's constantly with that struggle of realizing that she is her own woman.
Yeah. And
she is allowed to make these decisions because he's really just overprotective, right? Like, he just wants what's best for her. And it just shows in, I don't want to say problematic ways, but, I guess 30 years later, we could look at him and be like, a little problematic. Like, he's very, very, well, maybe not problematic might be a strong word, but I don't know. Overbearing, for sure.
Overbearing, yeah, that's a good word. I mean, so there's a scene in Moonstruck where it's like, why do men, cheat? And it's because they fear death. And like most of our actions can be.
Is that why?
Yeah, that's according to Moonstruck. That's like the famous joke. Most of our actions could be because we're afraid of death. Maybe he just doesn't want his daughter to grow up because he's one step older, one step closer to the grave, right?
I guess. So, that's
it's a theory.
But both George Banks say this, right? When there's a scene in both films that I think always that does work, and that's when it's the father telling the daughter,
yes,
oh, put on a jacket, and when she doesn't listen, and then when the other guy says put on a jacket,
yeah, when her fiance says it, yeah,
it's that feeling of just like, oh no, I am no longer like, I don't know. You could read that as like, obviously, like, I am no longer like that man.
The man in her life, yes.
But then it also becomes just like, but now she's also not listening to me. I am no longer the alpha male. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I no longer have the control or like the input that I used to. Yeah. Well, it's interesting because like in weddings you have your first dance and then you dance with your parents, right? So it is kind of like this passing down of like my role in your life is now going on to the others. And we could get really Freudian if we wanted to, but it is also like, what did he feel competition,
Right.
for like the role in his daughter's life by this guy, like what was it? Or did he want to see himself? Like sometimes people want like, oh, you remind me of me, like they want that their child's significant other to be like them. It's interesting.
Yeah.
And
despite the fact that they never realize that their child has become
them.
them.
Yeah.
And usually the worst traits.
Yeah.
Right? I know this from experience because Eddie constantly calls it out. She's like, oh my God, you are so much like your mother sometimes. I'm just like, don't ever say that. I will. I will leave you.
Yeah. But I am glad you brought that scene up. I was going to bring that scene up because I do think that's a really good example of kind of like what the comedy and the sympathy that the films are both trying to get out of their audience. And I guess for someone who just doesn't fit any of those bills, I always see those scenes. I'm like, this is interesting.
Which is funny because like it's almost verbatim from the 1950 film, and yet I think it's just Steve Martin's performance and like his delivery of the line that just made it funnier.
Yeah.
In my opinion, like I think it was just a delivery. Like I think he said it's like, oh no, like almost like that, like almost like it's like shock. It's just like this is it. Where the other guy kind of played is like, this is it. This was a moment.
Yeah.
When I'm no longer the man in her life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I guess this is where delivery counts. And I don't know. I mean, Steve Martin is pretty endearing.
I think so.
Film.
Yeah, I think Steve Martin's pretty convincing in any dramatic moments. But it's interesting because for every dramatic and heartfelt moment, there's a wacky moment to the point where George Banks lands in jail, essentially at one point.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, flipping out about the
hot dogs. Yeah,
and the hot dog buns, which I think is something that people still bring up all the time. I think they do that just because, like, sometimes I don't know. You want extra bread.
Yeah.
I use its dip.
Yes.
At barbecues.
But I don't know if your father landed in jail. I mean, and they were like freaking out so much over you getting married. Like, I'd probably be a lot more upset than Annie was with her father.
Yeah, but like, it's interesting because this George Banks he's going through a breakdown, but it's so much less about Annie at this point, or it's really just him. It's like really coming to terms with just like letting go. It's really a letting go thing. He's just it's not like, I think like, he makes those snide remarks about like, oh, he doesn't approve of like the guy she's with because he didn't know him, but it's really, that's not what this is about. It's really just about like him letting go and that fear of letting go. Right. And like, so that's where he has like his breakdown moment. And, Diane Keaton's character calls him out for what it is. It's just like, you need to just get on board.
Yeah. You need to stop telling people how much it costs. You need to stop complaining. You need to stop making it about you.
Right. She does. Yes, you're right. Which we were just complaining about the 1951. It's all me, 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 me. Here, she's just like, well, you stop that. This is about her.
Yeah.
And technically also Diane Keaton, because she wanted a nice big wedding for her daughter also.
The big thing that this movie does differently than the first one is that when it introduces a wedding planner, which the first movie does do with Leo G. Carroll, they don't use it as a comedy thing.
Right.
Like a moment to enter in a new comedic character. And this movie does do that with Martin Short as Frank Egelhofer. Frank Egelhofer. So nowadays, this would never happen where a person is doing an accent or an impersonation, if you will. Do you think?
Why? That's so wrong. Like,
I know, right? Well, I'm just saying.
Accents are funny. I constantly doing accents.
Hey,
when I role play,
Oh no, I mean,
not good.
I love doing impersonations of people and stuff, but it's just not commonplace. So in a day and age where we're like taught that these things aren't good anymore, do you think Martin Short's performance has aged well or bad?
I thought it was fine. I did.
I think
Maybe
it's perfectly fine.
I thought it was fine. Like, he's not, because the joke. Here's the thing, right? He's not. I can't like classify where his accent comes from. So it's kind of nondescript. But also the joke isn't necessarily the accent. It's the overall performance, right? It's about the lavishness. It's about like him really pushing this agenda for the wedding. It's not. the accent itself isn't what is funny. He's not using the right. That's the thing. I think sometimes when you do impersonations of other accents, if the joke is the accent, that's where it's fucked up. However, if you're doing the accent to still make a pointed reference about something else that is funny, then you use the accent as a crutch. Okay, but like it's not. You have to look at the whole package, and that's what I think you have to look at with Martin Short's performance here. He's not making fun of anyone. I mean, he's a little queer coded, I guess, but we don't know for sure if he's queer. He could just be very, very metrosexual back then. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I mean
European, as they said back then.
I agree. Although I was expecting to laugh more. I'll say that because Martin Short's outlandish. He's so theatrical, and like this is what he does. He does in person. He's never really Martin Short. Or if he is, he's like to 1,000.
Right.
And so I guess with that, I was just expecting it to be slightly funnier.
That's right. You only recently saw this.
I did only recently see this.
And, yeah.
I think I think I might have needed to grow up on this movie, which I did not.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, keep in mind, like he's not a main. I don't know why he has like top billing in the poster, for example, for Father of the Bride, because
seriously.
he's in it so little.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, he's just like he's literally an ancillary character who is in there to just push the story along.
Yeah.
And rise up the costs of the wedding.
And his assistant, played by B.D. Wong.
Oh, that's right, B.D. Wong,
recently in Jurassic World. Who I thought was a little funnier than Martin Short at some times. So
B.D. Wong is on the LGBTQ community, right? Or am I making that up?
I believe.
Am I confusing that with his character from Law and Order SVU, or is that really real life? I don't know.
No, he is. He is.
He is. Okay, yeah, okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he's allowed to play an eccentric homosexual, you know what I mean?
Yes. Other than any other thoughts, what did you think about Annie?
Annie was fine. I mean, these the daughters can be insufferable. She was, I think, less insufferable than the previous daughter.
Okay.
Because I don't know.
She was more feminist.
Maybe in retrospect, maybe that's what it is. But I thought when she had her little breakdown where she's just like, "Oh my God, he got me a blender. What is that about?" It's a blender. Also, why is he giving you a gift? You guys are getting married.
I actually really appreciated that because it is kind of like, oh, what do you like? What she says, the expectations of what he wants from me and like sees me doing in this marriage freaked me out. It's like, what do you think I'm going to be? Someone who cooks for you all the time? Like, I actually thought that was really believable. And I was like, a
blender doesn't cook though. A blender blends.
But it's a kitchen utensil. It's like a housewifey thing.
He should have got her. Now you want to make that point more pointed, that scene, you get her a vacuum cleaner. But I feel like most people would agree. It's just like, don't you fucking leave his ass.
I guess, yeah, they wanted it to be something a little bit more subtle, so it's like she immediately went to that conclusion. I'm gonna defend this joke. I think it worked.
All right, fine. Fine. That I'll give the pass. I thought it was an overreaction. But I mean, he was quick to apologize and stuff.
Yeah, so. I think, but that's the thing. I actually think it was an overreaction just because she had her own freakouts about it. Yeah, that just got complete. She projected a lot.
Absolutely. I think that makes sense. Like, obviously.
Yeah, and that's believable. I love when I see people acting stupidly in movies because I'm like, this is so wonderfully believable. You know, like I love stupid people because we're all fucking stupid people. But that was it for the most part. I think, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
I kind of wanted her to have more conflict with her dad, but it's whatever.
No, because I mean, you want conflict with your parents, you got to watch the 2022.
Exactly. Film. What a perfect segue that is, right?
Yeah. Thank you.
Let's get our HBO Max started and watch this new Father of the Bride movie. It just came out actually about a month ago. We're a little late on this. It's been streaming since June 9th, I believe.
No, it says June 16th.
June 16th. There we go. Very quietly released, in my opinion. Of course, they did not decide to release this in movie theaters. And I haven't really seen many promotions about it. It's probably on platforms made for people who are 50 and up, like The View or something.
Yeah, maybe that's why we haven't seen like advertising for it.
Yeah,
maybe like
because we're probably not the demographic.
Right, on older people's Facebooks. Yeah, they're getting it's like Father of the Bride. Gloria Estefan. It's Andy Garcia.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, this movie that I grew up watching in the 90s. You know, because I guess millennials aren't asking for Father of the Bride.
Yeah, right.
remake.
Millennials are not even millennials. Like Zoomers are now asking, it's just like, just give us a raise.
Yeah.
That's all they. You know?
Exactly. But we have one, and this time it is a little different because this is an all Latino cast, and it is
Yes.
two Latino families coming together.
The father of the bride's family being Cuban, and the soon-to-be groom Mexican.
Yes.
And as a Latino myself, obviously, like I do relate to this idea of, even though we're all Hispanic, we all have very specific cultures, usually derived from our country of origin.
Yes.
Which is why I think this is like a very, I'm just going to say this, like politically, there's this idea of like, oh, all Hispanics are Democrat. That's not usually the case, because like every, like if you go to, you can't, Democrats do this. I'm getting political now only because like it's just pissing me off about where we are in this country. But Democrats do believe it's just like, you can't paint us with one broad stroke. We all have very different cultures, and as a result, we have different beliefs. Cubans, especially the ones portrayed here, tend to be very conservative, both in terms of political ideology, but also in terms of their beliefs of tradition.
Yep. I can 100% agree with that. Here. Yeah, I am Cuban, and that is very true. My family, I did not grow up with a lot of people who I was like, oh, I could tell you I'm gay.
Right, exactly.
So, but it is what it is. So this movie is primarily concerned with a Cuban household in Miami, of course. This movie takes place in Miami.
Obviously.
The father's name is Billy. He is a architect, Billy Herrera, with his wife Ingrid.
His name was Guillermo. Okay, Billy, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's Billy. And his wife Ingrid, played by Gloria Estefan, who is a very well-known Cuban. I'm pretty sure Andy Garcia is also Cuban. But don't quote me on
Andy
that.
Garcia is Cuban.
Okay, cool.
I know we usually see him in like Italian roles, but he is he is Cuban.
I feel like the people who made this film watched the original, or at least the 1991 Father of the Bride, realized how much that Diane Keaton didn't have to do, and was like, we got to give Gloria Estefan more. And so they put this whole B story of the fact that Billy and Ingrid are on the verge of a divorce, and they actually agreed they will get a divorce, but because the same night that they're going to announce it to their family, their eldest daughter comes and says, her name's Sophia, says, I'm going to get married. They decide to put it on hold after the wedding.
Which, from a story point of view, I thought it worked. I actually didn't hate that narrative device of just like, oh, okay, now we have different stakes. So it's already, I know the movie I'm supposed to be expecting. They change it up just a little. Yeah. Enough for me to say it's just like, okay, let's see what you guys do with this and stuff. And obviously, it becomes a ticking time bomb, like obviously this is going to come. We know this is going to come out and somehow interfere with his wedding. It's just a matter of when.
Yes.
And how.
Yes, exactly.
So the how was a little contrived in my opinion, but it happened.
Well, this movie also was like, okay, what did the other movies not give us enough of? And they tried to fix that. Usually in both of the other films, there are siblings who don't really get to do much. And they tried to fix that with giving Sophia a sister who's really close to her in age. And it's Cora. And Cora is very different. She's not, she feels like Sophia is kind of like the star child, the perfect child, did everything right. Sophia's a law school graduate and has a great job, whereas Cora wants to be a fashion designer, but just got fired from her job. So, there's...
And let me tell you, again, coming from a Hispanic family, this is true. There is always a preferred child. There's always a child who's living, who is meeting the expectations of said child, and the other one who's just like looks like the black sheep in comparison. I am lucky enough to be. Yeah. I am definitely the preferred child.
I am the black sheep of my family. But I feel like everyone accepts me for who I am, which is fine.
That's good though. That's good.
Or at least I am exceeding expectations since my bar was quite low. Maybe I'm being really, really making this all up in my head. But I just want to say that the movie begins with actually a flashback about Billy and Ingrid's love story. And young Ingrid is played by Gloria Estefan's daughter.
Oh, that's why they looked. I was I was so curious to know. It's just like, why does she look? She looks so much like her.
Yeah, and that's why.
Yeah.
That's why. And
There we go.
Gloria Estefan's daughter looks just like her.
Mhm.
Every time I say her name, I have to say her her full name because I just love her name.
Of course. Oh yeah, no,
Gloria
Gloria.
Estefan.
I mean, she's
It's a
also
great name.
Gloria Estefan. You put some respect
Seriously.
behind that name. You know
Seriously, I would highly recommend her album Mi Tierra. It's a fantastic album. If you
that
haven't
is a good
listened to
album.
it.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
great.
yeah.
I grew
I
up
do-
listening to her. I love
Yeah.
her. I saw her show on Broadway too on your feed.
Oh, me too.
Yeah.
I took my mom to see.
I took
She,
my mom to see it too. Yeah.
My mama loved it.
Yeah.
Because obviously the music just takes.
It was just the music. It was
Yeah.
a whatever story, but I was just like for all the songs. So
Plus, that's where I discovered. I didn't know that Gloria Estefan had gotten into a horrific bus accident.
yes, yes,
That
mhm.
almost ended her career.
Almost. And the fact that she's still walking is wonderful. So
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
remember when that happened. So
Yeah, I didn't know, but my mom then afterwards was telling me like, "Oh yeah, no, this is a big deal in the Latin community."
yeah, that's why I knew about it. It was a big deal.
Like
when
the
it
closest thing
happened.
was Selena dying.
I remember when that happened too. Yeah.
Say that I do remember. Yeah.
But so Sophie is going to marry Adan, I think his name is Adan.
Yeah.
Adan. I can't remember.
Adan. That's how they pronounce.
Yeah, and all of these actors, like I don't really know them.
Diego Boneta, I feel like I've seen him in things. I couldn't place it. He looked familiar.
Yeah, he did look familiar, but I did not know the girl who played Sophia. I did not know the girl who played Cora.
I mean, let me tell you, this is a beautiful cast.
Yeah, no, everyone's beautiful, and everyone's well off, which is one of the things I hate about the tropes in the fam-coms or the rom-coms is that you can't show
Everyone is
people
like-
of modest means. Everyone has to like be living really, really rich lifestyles.
Yeah, but isn't that part of the fantasy, right? Like, because as I mentioned, it's just like, fathers don't pay for weddings anymore because they're so expensive.
That's what the genre has become, I think. But if you look to like When Harry Met Sally, I mean, I think that was more of like not so much a fantasy. They were really trying to be realistic in their portrayal of people. Of course, it was all people who lived in New York and stuff, but still.
Wait, weren't they like corporate people?
Well, she was a journalist, which
They were like
whatever.
yuppies? Oh no, maybe I'm thinking of the other one. You Got Mail is what I'm thinking about.
Yes, that is very different.
That's
yeah.
the one where there's like corporate espionage.
Yeah,
going
and it's like about the little shop around the corner, and yet
Yeah.
it's totally flawed, but whatever. Yeah. So, oh yeah, I know him from. He's in that movie Rock of Ages. Have you ever seen Rock of Ages?
No,
Oh, okay. Well, if you want to watch Tom Cruise sing, and
but he played Luis Miguel in the Netflix series Luis Miguel, which my mother has watched.
oh,
I know
there
this
you
for a
go.
fact.
There you go.
When she got Netflix, that was the first thing she put on. It's like, I've been dying to see this. It's like, what is? I didn't know this. For anyone who doesn't know, Luis Miguel is one of these big like Latin American singers. Very very popular south of the border.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
So Billy, the father of the bride in this movie, is really taking his machismo role seriously as the father of his household, and pretty much his daughter's going to marry, and he pretty much turns on all of those classic Latin macho things where he's just like cold, he's distant, he's way too logical, and really almost like too proud for his own good, and it immediately
absolutely, but
creates conflict with his family.
I saw it, but again, relatable in my opinion. I'm just like,
Oh yeah, I mean,
this
really
this man I do
outlandish,
know,
but also kind of like, oh man, I know this like machismo guy for sure.
like I know who this guy is. Like, yeah, he's affluent, but I've seen it so many times.
Yeah. And it's so funny because all the women in his life are just rolling their eyes at him. It's like, what the fuck are you doing? And yet he's persisting. He's like, no,
Yeah.
this is
This
my
is the way.
house. I'm putting my foot down.
Which is also something that happens all the time. Like when women in the households are always just they'll listen, but they never put up with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And he creates so much conflict, especially when we meet the other family, and they're so she's going to marry a
billionaire,
Mexican, and he's like, if they were like affluent, he's like, I build my house from the ground up,
from
and
the
all
ground
that
up.
stuff. Then this guy is just like, well, his mansion, fits like 3 of his houses.
Right. He was just like, it's like, oh no, this place is too small for a wedding. Where like, again, us millennials and even the young generation, just like, I can't even afford like a room. Like I can't an apartment the size of the living room.
Yeah, seriously,
Like, you know what I mean?
seriously.
Like,
And this is where it differs too, because the thing about I think my opinion about white people in America is that at least if you aren't from like a second or third generation family, like you're just considered an American because you're white. So there isn't
Right.
like too much anymore of like Irish versus Polish or Italian or whatever
Right.
thing.
You're just white now.
But racism to an extent is pretty prevalent in Latino communities. So it's yeah.
You mean within our own community?
Yeah.
Right? Like the darker your skin, like the more looked down upon you.
Yeah.
Absolutely, that's a real thing in the Hispanic community,
And
it's a big problem.
It's because we're not really, like if you're not white, you're not treated the same way in this country. So you are going to feel more akin to your culture. So but of course there will be conflict. So yeah, Dominicans trash talking Puerto Ricans,
All the
Colombians, and Mexican. Like everybody kind of like has like these fucking people. So they do
and how
highlight
thick your
that.
accent also is like
Yes.
is like a thing.
And it's like, oh my gosh, I hear, like, I mean, my mother's a wonderful, lovely, not racist woman, but she'll say things like, oh, that's such a typical Ecuadorian thing. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Oh yeah, no, all the time, absolutely. No. I empathize. Constantly having to correct my mom. Like we don't talk like that anymore, Bob.
Or like she'll see someone and be like, is she Dominican? She talks like a Dominican. I'm like, what does that mean? But so they highlight that in this movie.
But no. Hey, God, you're saying, what does that mean? But in the back of your head, you know what that means. And you had to recognize that problem. That because it's just ingrained in us. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, well, if my mother says it, then I'm gonna be like, oh, that's how. Yeah.
Because like you cannot pretend it's just like you don't know what they're talking. Because like we have to admit to ourselves, like of course we know what it is.
Yeah.
And that's but because that's the first step of admitting that that's the problem.
Yes.
Just saying. I become so much more woke after like the Roe v. Wade decision. Sorry, guys.
No. I appreciate that. But so the Mexican-Cuban kind of like conflict is here.
Culture clash, yeah.
But it does kind of take it to 11 or 1,000. There's one scene where he like refuses to even enter his house and starts singing the Cuban national anthem.
That was a little ridiculous.
I was like, this is too much. But it's like so this whole film is kind of like, oh man, I get it. I see what you're going for, relatable. But then it just always kind of takes it out of reach and making it a little too wacky or unbelievable or too cliche for me.
Oh, I would agree with the cliche. Not the wackiness was like, I don't think this movie was that wacky, to be honest.
Well, you see what this movie wasn't? It wasn't funny.
I don't know. I laughed at times, but I was also I found myself like way more sympathetic towards this film than I thought it was, because I came in like I'm just like, ugh, another fucking movie that I have to fucking watch. And then as I was watching it, to be quite honest, like very early on, like I was just like, oh, maybe it's because I just see myself relating with a lot of these characters.
I think that's what it is.
I've seen them before. I was just a lot more passive, and I was just like, okay, I get it. I do agree. The movie was cliched as hell. Like, obviously, the sister who wanted to be a fashion designer is going to make the dress, and then, as I said, it's just like, we know the divorce is going to be that ticking time bomb, and it's going to be revealed at a certain point, So, I think maybe the wackiest part, which I don't know if it's wacky, this is probably realistic, is the hurricane that hits and like kind of like fucks up all their wedding plans.
And the wedding planner, who's not very funny.
Oh yeah, the wedding planner was kind of like the lowest low. I felt like that was such a caricature.
Yes,
like the entitled white girl. Sorry,
yeah,
sorry guys, but that's what she was. She was like the entitled white girl who has never done a wedding planning before, and like it's the first time. Conned her way into this job, but I don't know. I didn't feel bad for her. She clearly was affluent, so I'm just like,
oh no, I didn't feel bad for her, but I didn't find her funny either. She was supposed to be the comedic relief or something. Not funny.
Like when she mispronounces the names and stuff, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
It was just like,
or called him Papi. It was like cringy. It was more cringy than it was funny.
Cringy, yeah.
But I don't know. But maybe they were going for her to be cringy. Like maybe that was actually like what they were trying to do with her.
I guess.
I don't know. I can't speak to it because now as I'm thinking about it, it's just like because maybe that's she was supposed to be.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, the movie, it towed the line. It's like there were things I could appreciate it for, and then there were things I was like, oh, why are you being so cliche? Or like, oh, I've seen this so many times before and done better. Like, why?
I would agree with you.
It did have a lot of potential, and for me, I just really like. To me, if you're gonna pose yourself as some form of comedy, then you got to make me laugh, and I chuckled, perhaps.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I think for me, the movie, it was, again, I thought just fine. But I think where it let me down a little was where at the end, the couple that was divorcing, right? Gloria Estefan's character and Andy Garcia, they start to make amends with each other, and they're kind of like, it's implied that they're going to get back together by the end of this, right? Which I thought is just like, what a disservice. Like, here you had a chance to actually show, like, that what, not, I don't believe the statistics that say that like half of marriages end in divorce is actually not an accurate statement. But divorce is real, and I think this would have been a good moment to have, like, because divorce is such a frowned upon thing in the Hispanic community because we're so Catholic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we are so Catholic that like divorce is it's still such a frowned upon thing in our community that I thought it's just like, here we had a chance to kind of maybe set this film apart where we don't have I thought it would have been great if they were just cordial with each other and just accept it's like, but our time is up and that's okay. We can make peace with this and stuff because we have raised a wonderful daughter. But they decided to go the hack and go, we're going to get back together.
Well, I guess also for me, I found it kind of unbelievable because there's one point in the movie when he starts singing the Cuban national anthem where he really embarrasses not only himself but his family when he says he does not approve of the marriage and does not approve of Adnan or something. I can't remember his name. Adnan. And it just kind of like comes out. And then like his daughter is the one who has to like put him in his place. Mm-hmm. And he does act kind of ridiculously throughout this whole movie. So I'm like, really? Like, what? How did he redeem himself in your eyes for you to want to take him back? Like, This
is a good question. How did he redeem himself? Because by the end, like, so when it's revealed that they're going to get a divorce at the rehearsal dinner, I think, she walks off. She's going to call off the wedding, right? That hits the beat. Wedding is now in peril. Mm-hmm. So he chases after her and they have a talk. And I don't know. I guess that was a moment. It's just like he's come around. But he did come around to Adnan prior to that, right? Where he had that one-on-one talk at the club. Yeah. And he realized like, oh, like she wants to move to Mexico, right? Because that was a big source of conflict that like she wants to move to Mexico. Well, they were going to move to Mexico together. So he felt that like not only was she leaving the country, she's going to like another Hispanic country, right? Yeah. Like, so he even felt more removed than like the other fathers have felt. But then we come to learn that the reason she wants to move to Mexico is because she wants to help the border crisis that's happening right now. Again, a little, I don't want to say contrived. I think it was a little on the nose. Yeah. It's just like, okay.
A little trying to please the liberals too much.
You have already this movie itself was already pretty liberal. Right, so you didn't need to do that. Yeah, we don't need to make Sophia such a perfect character.
Yeah,
right. She's already gorgeous. Like we could have. It's okay if she wants to move to Mexico because they offered her a high-paying job or whatever, or she wants to live with his wealth. I would have been okay with that. You know what I mean? Because his family's pretty well off, right? So, but we had to make her like a saint. But I don't know where I just went with this tangent. Other than like, I don't know how they redeemed him because they did.
Yeah.
Like, other than the fact that, like, he hosted the wedding at his small mansion,
Yeah. I mean, is that enough? Just, like, making it all happen in, like, their little place and making it look beautiful? Yeah. But we had established that it wasn't enough for her and she was unhappy. So it was things like that where it's like, I don't know, this movie feels like it's trying to hit all the beats, but I definitely missed one.
So to be honest, this is why I think it was released on HBO Max, where I think it's just like the movie is fine. It could have been better. That's exactly, but you know what? You're not paying extra for it, so how about it? And that, generally speaking, influences how I see a movie. I didn't pay extra for this. I already have HBO, so I was just like, okay, this is fine.
True.
Like, I'm not, like...
For me, I was more so upset with because my mom was very much looking forward to this movie. Your mom? She fell asleep.
Oh, I'm curious. Maybe I show my mom because she's a Gloria Estefan fan, and like, this is not a Gloria Estefan driven film.
No,
this
is
not. A Andy Garcia driven film.
Yeah, they gave her a little bit more, but she could have had a fucking song, man. I'm sorry if you're gonna put Gloria.
That's what I wanted to say. I agree with you. Like,
give her a song.
She couldn't like serenade.
And there was like this one scene where they did because there's like a band that one of the family members have. Like the Immortals or something. and a woman sings that's not Gloria Estefan. I'm like, who is she? Why is she singing? Like, there is a scene.
They probably couldn't afford her singing fee, you know.
Maybe, yeah.
But no, yeah, I don't know. I thought it was fine. I do agree with you. This film could have been a lot better.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think it was a worthy attempt to kind of introduce a new point of view for this story, the Father of the Bride story, because you know how we were talking about tradition. I don't know how much. I know that conservatism is on the rise in America, but did we need another white centric story? Right? I think by showing the Cuban point of view, and I'm saying Cuban specifically because I think that was like the right choice for this story because of how they do lean conservative. I thought it made for a fresher take on this film.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that I thought it was just at best mediocre, at worst cliched.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's just like, I think, you know, it had the pieces, it just didn't mesh them all together.
That's my thoughts exactly, actually, on the film. It had a lot of potential, and we're almost there. But, you know, I guess just it's nice to see that more and more we're going to have things that we can look at and be like, I kind of relate. That within itself, I mean,
it was refreshing. Like, I thought it was going to be a lot more cringy, to be honest. Like, I was going to be like, oh, these are like what white people think Hispanics are like.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Like, I felt like a lot of the characters that came out was just like, huh, okay.
Yeah.
I like some of these things. And it's good. It's just like, all right, cool. Maybe we are moving in the right direction when it comes to portrayals.
I will say the one thing that this movie probably did best is made kind of like a fool out of the weird male pride thing that these men all exhibit.
The machismo.
Yeah. And I think machismo is a pretty big problem within the Latino community. It's like a unique,
absolutely,
you know, form of male privilege. So I think it really needed to kind of like highlight that as like buffoonery. Whereas the other movies, they like towed the line between genuine and then like wacky, but like not even the first one. Like he was just like all-American dad. So that was nice. Although the new one could have had a little bit more of like that relationship that the other two movies had with like the father with the daughter and like looking at it as like your little baby and not wanting to let them go. But, you know, you enter in the divorce thing, so it kind of removes all of that. But I did appreciate that about this new movie.
Yeah, I think the divorce angle, I think that was, I wasn't expecting it, right? And I think for me, honestly, I thought it was like, okay, interesting. I think, and like I said, it just like, it made me kind of say, it's just like, okay, this is now a story I haven't seen because it's not like a verbatim remake of the other two.
It didn't copy and paste it, you know? So that was good.
It tried a little bit different, so I was just like, okay.
Yeah, next time you guys will get it right. So.
Yeah, I have faith in y'all. You know what? But that's it.
So how would you rank these movies?
1950s at the bottom, 2022 above it, and 1991 above that one.
Wow, okay.
How would you rank these movies?
I don't know. I might put 1991 at the bottom.
Oh, really? At the bottom?
Well, at least, yeah, because I got to give it to the 1951 for being the template that 1991 kind of stole.
I mean, isn't it based off of a book or something?
Well, yeah, but like, it felt so similar to the film before it. It's like, why are you doing this? Even if you are a remake, like, do your own thing. Like this new one did. I'll put the new one in the middle, and I'll put the 1951 at top.
I think we can agree the new one actually deserves to be in the middle.
It's not the worst one, yeah.
It's not, no, by no means is it the worst one. It is definitely not the best one. We have very differing opinions on which is the best one. But you're right. I could be just conflating the fact that like I grew up with the 1991 one.
Yeah.
So maybe that's why I'm giving it the preferential treatment.
Sure.
But overall, these movies I thought were just fine, and that's it. Like father of the bride is not one of those things that I just like think about regularly.
Yeah.
I know even during the pandemic they got together to do like a reading of it, right, or something.
They did, yes, they did.
And we considered like covering it. I'm just like, I'm never that big of a fan of Father of the Bride, so like, nah, I'm good.
Yeah, and then this came out again.
And now this came out.
People love the wholesomeness. Maybe that's why this happened, is because they're like, well,
Yeah, it could be.
Let's give a little spin on this wholesome content.
Mm-hmm.
So, but what did you guys think? Did you watch it? Are you a fan of these movies? Let us know your thoughts, and you can do that by emailing us, remakesrebootsrevivals@gmail.com. Instagram @remakesrebootsrevivals, facebook.com/remakesrebootsrevivals. We are on Twitter @remakespodcast. If you enjoy this podcast, you can rank us, rate us, and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, as each ranking and review does help us tremendously grow. Lastly, we do have a voicemail service that you could call in and share your thoughts with. And that
number is 862-248-2326. That's 862-248-2326.
But can't wait for next week. So we won't tell you what it is just yet, but stay tuned for that.
Are we not saying because we don't know? Do we not
know? No, we know. We know. I guess you haven't seen it yet, so...
Probably not. I guess.
No, you haven't. If you haven't seen it, you haven't seen it.
Okay. Now I'm curious, guys. Just as you guys are. Like, what is next week?
Yeah, tune in next week. Until then, stay unoriginal.